Most people think that leadership starts when you get the title, that someday somebody gives you a promotion or position and bam, now you're a leader. But here's the truth. If you wait until you're in charge to actually start leading, you're already behind. Real leadership begins long before you're ever given authority. It begins the moment that you start changing how you think. And in this video, I'm going to break it down. How to develop a leadership mindset, the exact mindset that's going to get you promoted, earn trust, and turn heads before the world ever gives you permission to lead. So if you're tired of being overlooked, if you're ready to lead with more influence, no matter your title, stick around. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Everyday Diplomat. I'm Michael Forras, a retired Marine Sergeant Major, former U.S. diplomat, and somebody who spent the better part of 20 years leading high-performing teams through crisis, conflict, and constant change. Here, we don't just talk about leadership theory. We give you the actual tools that you can use right now in the real world to lead with influence, clarity, and confidence. I want to tell you something that I've seen way too many times. Somebody gets promoted, they step into their new role, and they crumble. Not because they're not smart, and not because they don't care, but because they've never thought like a leader before they were actually treated like one. They were waiting. They were waiting to be told what to do, waiting for authority, waiting for somebody to hand them the permission to lead. That's not how leadership works. Leadership doesn't begin with a rank or a corner office or a fancy nameplate. It begins when you start thinking differently, when you start thinking like a leader. Let me take you back for a very quick second. Early in my Marine Corps career, I worked with two very different type of people. One had rank, but no respect. He barked orders, showed off, always had to be right, but nobody followed him unless they had to. The other had 0 stripes on their sleeve, but when they spoke, people listened. When something went wrong, they went to him. Why? Because he was already thinking how a leader should be. He wasn't asking, what's my job? He was asking, how do I help this team succeed? If you're stepping into leadership or you want to lead with more clarity, confidence, and credibility, start with the Foundations course at everydaydiplomat.com. It's the exact roadmap that I wish that I had before I ever stepped into a senior leadership position. You're going to learn how to lead teams, build influence, navigate conflict, and then get real results without burning out. Next up, let's break down 3 mindset shifts that turn everyday professionals into respected leaders before they ever get the title. So, what is a leadership mindset really? It's not some vague attitude. It's not being confident or taking charge in a loud performative way. It's built through very specific mental shifts that change how you see your role, how you show up, and how others experience you. Here are the 3 critical mindset shifts that I've seen separate future leaders from the crowd over and over again. Shift number 1, from reactive to intentional. Most people spend their day in reaction mode. They answer emails, they respond to problems, and they do the next task on their list. They're busy, but they're not leading. Leaders don't just execute, they think bigger. They ask questions like, what's the real goal here? Why are we doing what we're doing? What impact is this going to have downstream? What does this team actually need, and not just what does the boss want to see? I once worked with a junior Marine who made this shift, and it was completely obvious. She stopped waiting for direction and started thinking in terms of outcomes. She wasn't the loudest in the room, she wasn't the most experienced, but she started leading with intention, and her influence skyrocketed. When you stop reacting to the work and you start owning it, people are going to notice. Shift number 2, from looking smart to staying teachable. This one is tough, especially for high performers. There's this fear that if you show any form of vulnerability, you're going to lose credibility. But I have found that the complete opposite is true. The leaders who grow the fastest are the ones who stay coachable, especially under pressure. Let me tell you a quick story. I once saw a senior Marine get absolutely wrecked in front of a considerably more senior officer. Not because he made a mistake, but because he couldn't admit it. He got completely defensive, and he tried to justify everything that he had done leading up to that point. He couldn't just say something like, "You're right, sir, that's on me." And in that moment, he lost more than just the argument. He lost the respect of the room. Contrast that with the junior team leader I once mentored. He caught a mistake early, owned it absolutely immediately, and brought a fix before anybody even asked for it. The result? More trust and more responsibility, and a heck of a lot more influence. Teachability builds credibility. When you lead with humility, you earn the space to actually grow into more. Shift number 3, from seeing your job to seeing the room. This one's subtle, but it's incredibly powerful. Most people tend to focus on their role, their checklist, their output. Leaders widen their lens. They notice what other people miss, the changes in team morale, the frictions between two different departments, somebody who's completely burned out but afraid to speak up about it. Perhaps a mission gap that nobody is addressing. Years ago, I walked into a room right before a critical brief was to occur. Everybody looked locked in. The uniforms were sharp. Nobody was saying a word, but something just felt off. The energy was wrong. People were technically ready, but mentally it just felt like everyone was disconnected. So I stepped back and I paused the brief and I started asking questions. And it turns out a critical piece of information hadn't made it down to the squad level. We caught it in time and it changed the outcome of the entire operation. That's what leaders do. They don't just walk into rooms, they actually read them. They pay attention, they sense early, and they act before things begin to unravel. Do you want to sharpen your leadership presence today, like right now? Grab my free guide, 10 Things to Never Say as a Leader. These are common phrases that quietly destroy your credibility and what to say instead to build trust and influence on the quick. Get it now at everydaydiplomat.com. It's completely free, actionable, and built for real-world leadership. I want to go ahead and give you one more example, this time from the opposite end of my career. When I was a sergeant major, I was often placed in commands that were already in trouble. Low morale, broken trust, leadership turnover. In fact, I actually never had a formal turnover with the predecessor. Every time, I was coming into a role where the previous leader had been relieved. That meant I didn't have time to ease in or learn the job slowly. I had to read the room fast, reset the tone, and earn people's trust on the quick. But here's the thing. Even as the senior enlisted leader, I didn't rely on the position to lead. I leaned into something more powerful: influence, trust, and presence. I would walk the spaces, not just storm in, not demand reports, just show up. I listened before I spoke. I watched dynamics unfold, and I asked calm, grounded questions. And that gave me insight that most leaders miss because their people only showed them the performance, the yes sir version, the version that they thought they were supposed to give. But because I showed up as a human, people began to open up. They let me in behind the curtain. And when that happens, you can actually lead the real team, not the version pretending to be fine. So whether you're a corporal or a CEO or somebody still waiting for your first leadership opportunity, the principle is the same. Leadership isn't just about what you say. It's about what people feel when you walk into the room. Do you bring calm? Do you bring clarity? Do you make the team better when you're around, even if you're not the one in charge? Here's how you can start practicing that mindset today. First, go ahead and watch the quiet people. The loud ones usually get attention, but it's the quiet, steady contributors who often hold the team together. Learn to see them and to acknowledge them. Second, don't take the bait. You're going to be tested. People will try to push you emotionally, especially when you start leading without a title. Your composure is going to be your credibility over time. Third, solve small problems before they become the big ones. Don't wait until something is your job. If it's in your line of sight and you can improve it right now, just do it. Leaders are fixers. They create forward movement. And fourth, develop your awareness. Practice noticing when morale shifts, when people get quiet, when deadlines slip without any explanation. Those details are often more valuable than any metrics that you're going to find. So to recap, you can build leadership influence before you ever assume the role. You do it by shifting your mindset, practicing presence, and earning trust. You don't need a promotion, you need purpose and consistency. That's what sets leaders apart, and that's what earns followership. That's what makes the title a confirmation of who you already are, not your starting point. All right, by now you're probably thinking, okay, I want to develop a leadership mindset, but something's still holding me back. That's completely normal. And I want to address the most common roadblocks that I've seen because I've lived most of them myself. And I've led teams full of people that are stuck right behind them. The first is fear of overstepping. This is especially common in structured organizations like in the military or law enforcement or even traditional corporate teams. You've been trained to stay in your lane, to follow the chain of command, and to not get too big for your britches, so to say. So the moment that you start to see something that actually needs to be fixed or someone who needs guidance, you might hesitate. But here's the key. Leadership mindset doesn't mean seizing control. It means asking better questions, offering support, and then showing up with purpose, not with your ego. When I was a young Marine, I worried that stepping up would look like I was trying to outshine somebody. But what I learned was that when your intentions are clear and your tone is grounded, people are going to respect you for leaning in, not holding back. Number 2, perfection and self-doubt. A lot of people hold themselves to this impossible standard. They think that I can't lead until I know absolutely everything, or even worse, that somebody else is probably better suited for this than me. Here's what I'll tell you. If you're waiting to be fully ready, you're never going to act. I've been part of the promotion process for people who weren't the most technical experts, but they were steady, humble, and reliable, and other people trusted them. You can grow into the skill set, but mindset is a non-negotiable. Number 3, imposter syndrome. Especially when you're new, younger, or in a group of highly accomplished peers, you might start to wonder, who am I to lead these people? But ask yourself this. If you've been showing up consistently, if people look to you for guidance, if your presence already makes things better, you're not an imposter. You're a leader in the making. The bottom line, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be the boss. You just have to start thinking like somebody who's responsible for more than themselves. And when you do this, everything is going to begin to change. There's something that I wish that more aspiring leaders would understand. You're being watched long before you ever get the job. Not in a paranoid weird way, but in a people are paying attention type of way. They're watching how you handle stress. They're watching how you treat people when nobody's looking. They're watching how you react when somebody else gets credit or when a meeting doesn't go the way that you thought. And they're not watching because they're trying to judge you. They're watching because they're trying to figure out, is this somebody that I would follow? I've had Marines approach me months after a situation and say things like, "Hey, Sergeant Major, I watched how you handled that and I learned a lot from it." And I would think to myself, you were actually really paying attention to that? And it turns out they were. People always are. That's why I always say that you're building your leadership brand every single day, whether you mean to or not. So instead of performing leadership only when the boss is around, start modeling leadership for the people who matter the most, your team. Here's what people notice whether you realize it or not. First is your reaction to correction. Do you get defensive? Do you shut down? Do you shift blame, or do you take it with maturity and move forward? Next, and this is an important one, how do you speak about others? Do you build them up or do you tear them down behind closed doors? Leaders who gossip lose credibility quick. Number 3, how you show up when it's inconvenient. Are you consistent only when it's easy or especially when it's hard? So here's the challenge. Live like somebody is always watching, because they are. Not because you're trying to impress other people, but because you're trying to influence. And here's the great news. You don't need a title for any of this. You just need to lead with intention even when nobody else is clapping. Let's go ahead and land this with something incredibly practical. A leadership mindset isn't something that you either have or don't have. It's something that you need to practice daily. And one of the best ways to strengthen that practice is through reflection, asking yourself tough questions before somebody else has to. So here are 3 questions that I challenge you to ask yourself every week. Question 1, where did I react this week instead of lead? Maybe you got frustrated, shut down, maybe you jumped to blame. How could you handle it differently next time? Number 2, who did I support or develop this week? Leadership is about lifting others up. Did you help somebody grow, or did you just complete your own list? And number 3, what tested my mindset and what did I learn from it? We all get stretched, but those moments are where real leaders are forged. These 3 questions are going to sharpen your edge faster than any podcast or promotion ever could. And if you're brave enough to answer them honestly, week after week, you're not just going to be thinking like a leader, you're going to find that you actually became one. If this video has helped you shift your perspective, go ahead and hit that like button, and please subscribe to the channel, and share this with somebody who's ready to lead with more purpose and less performance. Remember, leadership doesn't start with a title. It starts with a change in mindset, one that you build one decision at a time, long before the world ever tells you that you're ready. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on the Everyday Diplomat.